Hi guys. Yes, we are live. Hi guys, and welcome to the SEO Kitchen Show, the SEO webinar service series where SEO cooks from around the world debate in fiery discussions their SEO recipes, so they can balance out the flavors of their SEO recipes and come up with the best SEO tips for you. I'm your host for today. My name is Omi Sido. Please welcome our SEO cooks of episode 2 of the SEO Kitchen Show called Stir Fried Automation. Veronika Höller, Aleyda Solis, Roxana Stingu, and Kristin Tynski. Feel free to use the SEO Kitchen Show hashtag and ask any questions at any time in the question box below, and we will try and answer them at the end of the show. So we only have 40 minutes, by the way, so let's start with a quick introduction. Shall we start with Veronika Höller?
Hi, my name is Veronika. I am a global senior SEO manager for the combo group Medical. I'm an in-house SEO and I work in this area for 15 years right now.
Nice one. Shall we go to Aleyda? Everybody knows Aleyda, but still.
Yes, my name is Aleyda Solis. I'm an SEO consultant and so very looking forward to share with you today.
Roxana, please introduce yourself quickly.
Hello, everybody.
Before I ask you the first question.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Roxana Stingu. I'm head of search and SEO for Alamy, a stock photography company, and my neighbor decided to do some work outside next to my window.
Don't worry, we can't hear. And last but not least, Kristin Tynski.
Hi, everyone. I'm one of the partners at Fractal, one of the founders as well, and I've led the creative team there for about 10 years.
Okay, perfect. So today, guys, we're going to talk about SEO automation. So let me ask you my first question. Why should we automate things in SEO? Who wants to start first?
Well,
I think that the most obvious sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to give a quick answer. I think the truth is a lot of the most basic elements of SEO are very tedious, and no one wants to do tedious work, repetitive work. So
I completely agree with you.
It's about saving time, but also sanity, because the more you can automate the tedious pieces, the more you can focus on the real analytical parts and the creative parts.
100%. I will say that it is to save time on those things that are pretty much, let's say, legwork that is very, like, say, operational, that where like an actual SEO analyst or specialist won't add necessarily that much to the job, to gather data, to sort out data, to aggregate data together or connect data together. Our actual work actually is to analyze the data, provide recommendations that are context aware or specific, relevant to the specific business or process goals that are tied to revenue, ROI, etc. Right? But for that is let's say that is built up over data that can be pretty much aggregated, collected, put together in ways that can be pretty much automated at this point.
For me, if I can jump in,
yeah, of course.
I'm lazy. That's why I automate as much as I can. But as I tell my team, I tell them be lazy, but be constructively lazy, which means it's fine to spend 8 hours automating one task if it means you don't have to do it 5 minutes every day, because now you got 5 minutes every day to do something new.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's really important to automate some things, but I also think it's important to make the decision which task you automate. So at this point, it can help you, but if you are 8 hours on a task to automate your task, it makes no sense. So I think it's good, but think about which parts you want to automate.
I really like this point, actually, to think carefully about which part to. We're going to talk about this one later, but I like the idea that first, Roxana, you touched something very important. A lot of us are lazy, actually. I'm quite lazy, so when it comes to tasks that we repeat and do every single day. But it's not just laziness; it's also they're a little bit boring as well, right? But yeah, Veronika, I completely agree with you. We should be very careful which parts of SEO we actually automate, because we don't want to automate creativity, right? We really don't want to automate the creativity. We just want to automate the things that are like numbers, like Aleyda mentioned, data aggregation, because those are the boring tasks. They can be automated, and also it helps a lot with precision, right? Because doing something day in and day out, being bored, most of the time leads to a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, at the end of the day, it's also cost effectiveness, right? Because I mean, if we don't want to spend an SEO analyst or SEO specialist 8 hours or 6 hours or half a day on doing something that can be done much more cheaply thanks to the automation in data. So it's also about cost effectiveness of our day-to-day, of our process, our jobs, our projects too. And at the end of the day, also the ROI that we are able to obtain from our work.
I would also say that there are some types of analysis that need to be automated in order to actually do them, right? When you're trying to understand huge amounts of data, you need to automate certain parts of that in order to be able to analyze it thoroughly and find the hidden value inside of it. I would also say that it's interesting that you bring up not automating the creative parts of the process, because I hope we actually get to talk about that. I think there are some emerging ways that you can actually not necessarily automate the creative part of the process, but automate parts of the creative process that will lead to better creativity and more prolific creativity over time. So I hope we get to talk about like generative language models and how those can be implemented in SEO automation later.
This is a very interesting point, actually, to be honest with you. I've never thought about it, but that's why we're here in the SEO Kitchen, to discuss things and come up with probably new recipes for successful SEO. So let me ask you the next question then, because we've already touched this subject. Do we have to know how to program, script, code to be able to automate SEO tasks, especially when it comes to data aggregation? Do we need to know how to actually program, Aleyda?
No, actually, no. Thankfully, right? Like there are a lot of no-code tools, like Zapier, for example, that we can leverage. Of course, it helps to know at least the fundamentals of how you can work it out by yourself, right? And I have to say that also there are a lot of platforms or resources that allow us to do this in a let's say far easier way, rather than having to go in if you don't. It's not necessarily your call, for example, to go into to learn Python, for example. You can actually to learn quite easily to how to develop some scripts for Google Sheets, for example, and it will be just good enough to get you started, to build the basics, to understand the impact and the value of it, so you can later on delegate to a developer to build it out with all what you need, very likely, right? So I will say that. And I incentivize people to start actually like testing it out, those scripts that already exist for Google Sheets, for example. I am a fan of keywords in Sheets, for example. And there are a lot of functions that allow us to do a lot of stuff and aggregate data using Google Sheets, even for free. And then on the other hand, potentially to start playing around more no-code tools, right? Zapier, I am a fan of Zapier, how it connects many tools together, testing out APIs of many platforms that already exist, and we can also blend together with Google Sheets. So a lot of and plenty room to play around, even if you are not necessarily a developer.
I like where this is going. We talk about automation.
Yeah, there are a lot of stuff in the internet. So if you are searching for some scripts, I love GitHub. So if I need something, I go to GitHub and I look, okay, there are introductions, how you can make it. But from my point of view, I found it really important that you understand how the script or the program works. So yes, you can play with a lot of templates there are already right now. So you don't have to make anything. So you get templates in the internet, introductions. But for me, I have to understand how it works. So this is the reason why I have learned Python, or I have learned to read the scripts. So it's not the important things of the world, but I think it's easier for you. And if you speak to your development, if you understand what you're talking about, so you don't have to create the things, you have your guys, but it's easier to understand what they are doing and how it works and what you want, so you can better talk to them. So.
I would say one of the best things that's happened in the last few years is Google Collab. So it's basically a web environment for Python, and it basically does away with all of the hassle and complicated mess of installing Python on your own system, which I think is a roadblock for a huge number of people to learn it. And so if you have someone internally that even knows a little bit of Python, they can use other people's Google Collab notebooks or use Git repositories inside of Collab and then share it with the rest of their team who may have no code experience at all. But all they really have to do is press play a bunch of times in the different Python cells to get the output. And so we've done this at Fractal for different types of data acquisition. So like Google Trends, we do lots of stories on Google Trends and late breaking news. And so we'll scrape Google Trends using a Google Collab notebook that I wrote and share it with the rest of my team. And now the rest of my team has a notebook that they can just press play like 8 times and get a data set out from Google Trends that we can then use in a content marketing project and build links with.
Yeah.
So it can be really, really powerful if your team knows just like a tiny, tiny bit of Python, like just the very most basic part. And then you have other members of your team that are maybe a little bit more advanced that can build shareable notebooks in Google Collab to extend their power, essentially.
I love also the... Sorry,
Aleyda. It all sounds really good. It's easy for us to say Google Collab and Python and this and that, but we've been at it for, tens of years now. But we have all these beginner SEOs who are listening to this and they're like, I don't have time to learn Python and developers don't talk to me. So what am I going to automate? And the thing is, all the tools you have access to already will have some sort of automation available for you. Like you just kind of have to imagine it. A lot of us use crawlers that you can automate. You can schedule to start crawling every day, every week, every month. You can pull that data in Data Studio and then automate that to come into your inbox as a comparison. So you're already doing this. Yeah, you do these checks without even touching it, right? Because you're automating all of it. Or if you use Excel or Google Sheets, like that's how I started realizing I can be lazy. I can create templates with formulas and things. I can use macros without having to learn how to code anything. Of course, if you know a bit of app script, it does help because you do more complicated stuff. And then you get into the discussion we just had. But until you get there, don't think you need to understand Python or app script or anything. You just need to look at the tools you have and understand those tools allow you to make your life easier as they are.
100%. I believe that I will add 2 things. To one thing about what Kristin mentioned before of Collab. Yes, and you know what is also for me like was a game changer? Streamlit, the tool that allows to build a full web apps with those Python scripts, which by all means is great. But again, because of what Roxana mentioned, for new people who actually many times have like challenges to run the scripts in the first place, having a nice user interface that so they can start understanding how it works, the goal, and based on that, of course, if they want to start like expanding the script, whatever, excellent. There's a Collab there, and they have all the script out there, but at least there's a nice user interface with Streamlit, right? That is shareable. And then another point that Roxana mentioned, Roxana, thank you very much, because actually one of my pet peeves is seeing a lot of cases of, let's say, automations that you don't need to, let's say, reinvent the wheel, right? I see a lot of automation that for the sake of practicing, excellent, it's great. If you want to become a developer for SEO, that is amazing. But honestly, like, what is the point of automating from scratch a lot of stuff that we already have access to with a lot of the SEO platforms that we are already paying for? And it's a matter just to understand how many times their output or their API can be put together with another tool and blend them together, or using Google Data Studio even, or Google Sheets, right? So again, 100%, there are so many of these functionalities that are many times unfortunately hidden in the already existing platform that we use, that we should just learn how to leverage, right? You don't need to rebuild the wheel every single time. I mean, if you want to learn, of course, that is amazing, but to do stuff that you already know how it works is like great to develop your skills. But if that is not the case, just go and play around those functionalities that your tools already provide you.
Definitely. By the way, I use, because we're in the SEO, the Oncrawl SEO Kitchen, I use Data Studio to extract all the technical data from Oncrawl in Data Studio. And every time I crawl the website, actually the data goes there, and my developers can see everything and check if things are missing. But this is not about me. By the way, Aleyda, you mentioned a keyword that I've never heard before. Developer for SEO. I've never heard this term before. Developer for SEO.
You're laughing, but I do have a team member who's now kind of moving towards there, because he's
sounds
learning.
Good, by the way. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It sounds good.
Yeah.
We have a lot of need of small scripts for automation, for connecting to APIs and other things. And a lot of the stuff is just experimental for us. And instead of passing it on to development who can actually use their time to do proper things, I have a team member who's learning how to do these things, and his career is most likely moving that way.
You gave me a good idea, honestly, guys. This is gonna be my next team member, developer for SEO. So okay, so with that in mind, what is one of the things that you are most happy? What is the thing that you love, that you've managed to automate and you're using on a daily basis?
Yes, it's a script I found on the internet to automate images, to see if they are accessibility, if they have the right the right alt and title tag and something like this. So I love this tool because in my company is so we have 90 companies around the world, and everyone creates landing pages. And so every day I've got a lot of landing pages I have to check. And so it's so easy. So I take a look at on the images, I take a look on the videos and something what happens. And at the end on the content, because I'm not a native speaker for every language we have. So, but I love it. I love it. It's so easy. And yeah.
That's a good one, Veronika. Sorry to interrupt. Veronika, if you have a link to that, can you share it in the chat? Because I want it, and I'm sure other people will want it as well.
Yes,
yeah,
sure.
I'm happy to pay for this one.
I'm sure it's free.
Honestly. I'm also in charge of 60 websites across the globe.
Don't get me started. I have 300 million images.
Yeah.
The script was made for me.
Well, I work for an imaging company, so there you go. Kristin, what's your favorite project? Do you have a favorite?
Oh my gosh. I guess I can mention one that's like a work in progress. It's not fully perfected yet, but it's allowing me to do something I've never been able to do before. So It has to do with like doing initial research on like a vertical or a niche and trying to fully understand that content space. So like when you're building out content for a particular niche, you want to understand the top level categories and then the subcategories and then the subcategories to be able to build like an effective taxonomy or tree for how the information is organized on your site. But if you operate in like a massive niche that has a really, really huge long tail, so could represent hundreds of thousands of potential keywords and maybe tens of millions of searches per month, like it's really hard for one person to be able to fully understand the scope of all of the topics and subtopics that might be represented in that niche. So what I've tried to do is automate it using something called Sentence Transformer, which is basically an AI that groups similar text together, essentially. So you can feed it either like the keywords themselves, or you can feed it like search results of like the title and snippet, or some combination of thereof. But the idea is basically to give it the entire universe of keywords, and then use large language models to do like automated categorization. So basically separating those keywords out automatically into keywords that are most similar to each other. And then once that's done, you can use something like GPT-3, which is a large language model that generates text, to evaluate each of those clusters that your model has defined. So you're automating the clustering of the keywords, and then you're labeling those clusters automatically using a large language model. So what the result is essentially like a tree of all the topics, subtopics, subtopics, and then natural language descriptions of what those topics actually are. Right? Like we've been able to do unsupervised clustering of topics for quite a while, but it just separates it, right, into like groups. And you have to look at each group and say, okay, this one's maybe about like baseball bats, and this one's maybe about cleats, and this one's maybe about gloves. This would automate the entire process by leveraging GPT-3 to like evaluate what each of those keywords were in each of those clusters and say like, okay, all of these keywords are about this, all these keywords are about this. And then when you pair that with other search engine data, like volume of search or cost per click, or like different intent measures, or location-based information, then you can see like which subcategories or subcategories are actually the best opportunities, because you're able to surface that grouping of keywords that like maybe you as a human would have never found, because there are literally tens of thousands of these subcategories, but the AI is able to. So I don't know if I explained that well enough, but essentially it's an automated process for doing clustering and then labeling the clustering of
it actually sounds amazing, to be honest with you. Where do I buy your tool?
And how large can you go with this?
And, you know, I've done it up to like tens of thousands of keywords so far.
I'm thinking hundreds of millions.
Yeah, it could get expensive depending on which language model you use to evaluate your clusters and how many clusters you have. So like you could use GPT-3's largest model. It just depends on like where you want to use it. If you're like evaluating at a keyword level and you have to do millions of them, I mean, that's going to cost you a ton of money. If you're just evaluating, you know, 500 clusters at the end of it all, that's not very much.
But I can see a lot of different ways you can apply this onto a website, right? From improving internal search by knowing the connections with categories and subcategories and being able to offer related products based on that taxonomy that you now have, to ways of splitting large websites into categories and subcategories for user navigation, but also for crawling and discovery of products. So it sounds like a very good effort to do, because you can then use that information in multiple ways.
So what's really especially like intriguing about it to me is that Google is now using large language models to parse out categories and subcategories and understand the connections between those. And when you use either like a transformer model to do the clustering and categorization, and then another large language model to do the evaluation, you're doing something sort of similar to what Google is probably doing internally with their large language models. Though not as sophisticated, of course, but I think it's probably getting you closer to like the categorizational understanding of what Google has for your particular niche, if you're using similar large language models to do that sort of organization.
I think we definitely need another SEO Kitchen Show.
Another session
talking about
for this
content
one.
Yes.
creation.
For this one.
Which leads me to the next question, actually. Which we already talking about tools. What are some of the tools or requirements for good automation?
So I really like the opportunity of Google Sheets because a lot of add-ons. For example, speaking about sentiment analysis and language classification. I love Meaning Cloud that has an extension for it that is freemium. So I am actually share over the chat like
nice.
A presentation that I did a while ago, how I leverage Google Sheets for SEO. And so simple built-in functions sometimes that Google Sheets already has. I do SEO workbooks with it, right? So pretty much I aggregate from my crawl data, from rankings data with SEMrush, with then classification, content classification data with Meaning Cloud all together to identify and analyze opportunities from clustering to, for example, lack of technical configuration, internal links to content duplication. So again, it's like an SEO workbook altogether in order to like really accelerate the analysis and putting all the data in a single page for you to identify opportunities. So, well, this is what I do and I leverage a lot, and I'm thankful that Google Sheets allows all the flexibility around that, and also with all of the extension and APIs and extensions that pretty much can connect any API out there too. Within Google Sheets. So if you're just starting, I will highly recommend to give it a go. Then also regarding the tools that do good automation, I love using Phrase AI as a content optimization tool, and they have been really smart of how they integrate content automation. And I understand that this because they also understand who are their audience. A lot of their audiences are actually copywriters. So they cannot sell these functionalities to replace copywriter. And we shouldn't, if we want to also, ensure that we are communicating our own unique selling propositions and in particular context, what we provide to our users or potential customers, right? But we can certainly leverage a lot of these functionalities to generate new text, to pretty much generate outlines, to reword certain type of phrases or paragraph, or even automate also the outline or semi-automate. So it really can accelerate the content optimization or development process, and then adding like the cherry on the top with the copywriter being involved in it, because what it is not necessarily positive is like looking to replace the person who will actually help us to sell to another human, right? So I do believe that if we end up doing that, like we are going to end up doing what a lot of other people do. So yeah, that's not necessarily positive, right? We need to differentiate ourselves at the end of the day with that creativity. But yes, I love how Phrase in particular is leveraging automation type of functionalities that other players are doing differently, but they do it in a way that is pretty smart and allow us to accelerate our job.
I want to piggyback on that one because you probably heard about OpenAI, and now they're open to the public, and you get $18 credit that lasts you a few months of playing around, which is great. You don't need to know how to code anything. It's all text-based. So you write what you want it to do and it does it for you. And I told you at the beginning, I am lazy, but I'm lazy to the point where I use it for it to make my life easy in my day-to-day. So to give you an example, I'm putting together a presentation on EAT for the company for everybody to kind of understand how EAT influences everything and what they can do to help it. And I was thinking, okay, I need to come up with a catchy name to kind of include EAT, but I don't want to do it. So I just went to OpenAI and I said, give me 5 titles for an EAT related presentation. And one of the titles I actually went with because it was so good. So I'm just saying, like you said before, we shouldn't automate creativity, but in some cases maybe we should, because I'd rather use my creative time to come up with stuff that has an impact on revenue, and it's more important than me coming up with a catchy title to a presentation. I'm just saying. You can ask it to do a lot of stuff. If I have to write a large summary for something and I don't want to spend the 40 seconds it takes to correct my misspells, I just paste it there and I say correct my grammar. I'm just saying, you know, you maybe I shouldn't be saying this. Let me see who's on here. I hope my boss is not here.
Speaking of OpenAI, I don't know if you've seen the Danny Richman Mueller bot that he developed, leveraging OpenAI.
Yes, where you can ask questions and get answers from John Mueller. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
It's really nice. Yes, yes.
But it's a way of automating you searching for John Mueller's tweets, right? Because it uses John Mueller's previous tweets. So anything you ask, you will answer based on what John Mueller said before. Yeah. So it's a way of automating searching for his answers. So next time you're trying to explain it to somebody why you're doing something, and you're trying to say because John Mueller said so, just go and use that, because it's easier than digging through years of tweets from John Mueller. It's automated, right? Yeah. But yeah, I do recommend it. Create an account. It's free. You get lots of credits to play around and understand that you will want to invest £10 a month in that because it's so cool. And you can even get it to write poems for you and things. It goes all sorts of crazy, but it does a lot of stuff.
So yeah, OpenAI's GPT-3 is the same thing that I was talking about that does the evaluation of the clustering, and it's really fascinating to hear you guys talk about how you're utilizing it, because I think more than any other tool, large language models, and probably in particular GPT-3 by OpenAI, is going to transform the way that we do SEO and content marketing. And one of the places where I see it being potentially most valuable is helping you to understand when you're writing or trying to come up with ideas, what the full scope of those ideas might be. You might have just one or two pieces of what you know about that topic, but GPT-3 is going to help you flesh it out incredibly fast. And to the extent that you're going to be able to comprehensively cover that topic in a way that you probably wouldn't have been able to without it. And then of course, all of those other things like just helping you to be creative by doing things like coming up with titles, or even giving it examples of ideas that you've come up with that you like, and then having it use that as a basis for coming up with additional ideas. So we've done internally at Fractal, we've done lots of experiments, fine-tuning GPT-3, giving it lots of pre-prompt examples, and having it actually do ideation on like data journalism style content. And it's quite good at it. And it gets even better at it if you fine-tune it with examples of your own, which they now have, the fine-tuning is now openly available, so anyone can do it, which is pretty incredible, and allows for things like creating a replica of yourself in a Twitter bot if you want to, by training it on your own tweets, which to me is kind of crazy, and I'm not really sure where that's going, but yeah, it's automation of quality content in some senses.
And can I also add, it can also write code snippets for you. So if, for instance, you have access to your database, you know how it's composed, what columns, what tables, what everything, you can just say, write me a SQL that pulls this information from this column, you know, sorted by this, and it will write you the code you need to run. So for instance, if you pull data from analytics in BigQuery and you don't know SQL, you just have OpenAI write the snippet for you. It's that simple. And it works pretty well for Python as well if you just want simple stuff. But if you want to code in Ruby on Rails or something that's not as popular online, then it doesn't work as well. But for simple things to get you started, you can just tell it what to code and it will code it for you.
It's an amazing way to learn Python, by the way. If you're interested in just playing around with a Google Collab notebook and then you get stuck, put that code into GPT-3 and have it help you. Ask it questions about that code, ask it to rewrite it in different ways. It can do all of
it. So many good.
The other tool I wanted to mention that's just hands down, I think, like the most universally used tool at Fractal in both the content marketing work that we do and the SEO work that we do, and that's Tableau. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, there's no better tool for quickly examining data and building data views. It just lets you get to like the important parts of your data so much faster than any other tool I've ever used. And there are similar tools that are probably equivalent, but that's my personal favorite.
Yeah, I also use Power BI, and I'm a big
Yes.
Data Studio user just because of how easy it is to use. And now that they've included different types of joins for the data, the Data Studio is becoming one of my favorites. I know it doesn't compare with the bigger tools in terms of what it can do, but when you need to set up a quick report on monitoring on something, it's so useful. I have about 150 something dashboards that I've created because I want to keep an eye on something, and I have them automated in my inbox at random times of the day throughout the week, so I don't get report fatigue. But it's useful because this is how I've discovered a lot of weird stuff, and I would never have the time to actually go into Google Analytics and look at that data to notice something is wrong. But once I considered that this is an area I want to keep an eye on, it literally takes 2 seconds. I can see it in the preview in my Outlook, and if everything looks fine, I just move on. So it's an easy way to automate, well, to avoid disasters, I guess.
To avoid disasters. So with that in mind, and because we're kind of running out of time, let's go to my final question. We already discussed it. I expressed my opinion, but what are some things that can be automated in SEO? Everything can be automated in SEO.
I think that's a scary thing to admit, that it can all be automated. I think to some extent it's true that it can be, because now content creation can be automated, both with like these large language models that we've been talking about that can write text at like a college level almost. And now also things coming out like DALL-E 2 or Imagen, which are these text-to-image models that can visualize anything, any natural language text. They can create it, and it would be essentially on par with, like, you know, what maybe like a high school artist could do. And to me, that's terrifying. But
sorry, it is
also
scary. That's what I wanted to say, because I work for a photography website, and with Imagen, you can create these photos out of thin air. Same quality.
Aleyda, what do you think about it? Quick answer from you.
Well, I think that, of course, like I don't want to automate the stuff that I enjoy first on the first place, and the stuff that actually make the change of my work to make it different and unique, and the reason of why clients want to work with me. I am very practical like that, right? So I want to focus on that, on what I actually enjoy and why the clients come to me and not to the next SEO. Because that is the real value that I'm providing. That is my unique selling proposition. Anything else, everything else that is also not tied with the specific context of the client and their need to achieve specific goals that all of these tools by themselves won't be able to sort out, is me building the strategy. I want to be able to control that, of course. Maybe there will be a point in the future in which we will have sophisticated enough SEO tools that we will be able to input all of the context of our industry or competitors for the particular group of queries that we're trying to focus on. Oh, this is our level of competitions. These are our competitors. These are the queries that we want to target. These are the type of pages. This is the intent, etc., etc. And then they will sort out with a proper strategy. After that, I'm all game, right? But right now, I don't see yet that is the case, and this is where I want to actually focus on, and where I think that doesn't make sense to try to automate. I'm afraid that I believe that, again, many people who start in SEO believe that it's about checking checklists, unfortunately, on SEO tasks, and that this can be automated, right? Like the layer above, the strategic layer above, the one that we actually think and connect with the outcome from a business standpoint, is the one that cannot. So we better focus on that and know how to leverage what can, on the other hand, be automated to facilitate our work.
Yes, and the strategy. Yes, of the strategy. So I have create strategies for all my countries, and they have all their special needs. So there's nothing I can automate. So I have to talk to them, and I have to talk what's the culture, what's the collegial language. From my point of view, content never should be created with automated tasks. So for me, it's unique. It have to be natural. It have to be good, because it's the fuel of every SEO task you have. So I think the strategy is the important things and could never be automated. Never.
I think when I think when it comes to content, the fact that some of it is becoming automatable is going to raise the bar in terms of what's required for content quality to actually rank well. I think Google will increasingly get better at identifying machine written text. And I think we'll start to see in the next few years that there actually is a lot of this already on the internet. And hopefully perhaps we'll see some of it being devalued soon.
Yes, it's not good content. So so I think it's important for a good ranking website if you have unique content on the site written by persons who know what's the topic, what's their needs, what they know about this. So for me, never. I would never let a machine write my content. Never.
I'm sorry to tell you, but probably 20% of what you've been reading this week is machine
Yes.
created. I'm just saying, but sometimes it's so good you have no idea.
Yeah, machines are getting better and better. Unfortunately, guys, we don't have any more time. Time flies. We definitely need another session for automation and machine learning and AI in SEO and content creation in SEO. So, but we do have 10 minutes for a quick Q&A session. Let me actually go through the questions, if there are any questions in the chat, so we can try and answer them.
While you do that, I'll just get ready with my chef hat.
Oh.
Ready to share recipes now.
Guys, don't hesitate to ask your questions in the chat. I can't see them. I'm gonna. Oh, I really like this comment from Damien. So SEO automation is probably already all around us.
I am seeing some questions coming in.
Yes, the moderators are not giving me the questions. Do I have to go through the questions myself?
I can help you with that. So we had a question about where can we find some Google Collab notebooks that are already existing and coded, and Veronika shared a bunch of them already.
Yes.
Yes.
And then we have, where would you recommend SEOs start if they want to automate parts of their workflow?
Yeah, this is actually a very good question. Where would you recommend SEO starts if they want to automate parts of their workflow?
I think it totally depends on which part of their workflow they're talking about. You know, which specific SEO or content related task you're going to be using. Probably different data sources depending.
I think that the first one that is rather easy to automate will be keyword research, because you will want to gather a lot of data from many data sources that you can put together all the time, all together. And then also for keyword mapping, right? Even if there are like many tools actually right now that can do this already, this amazingly well. Keyword insights, for example. So again, of course, if you want to work around and do you come up with your own solution, but you heard me before about a little bit against reinventing the wheel, but that can be something quite amazing for you to start doing. And I can definitely see that can be like straightforward to automate. Yeah.
So from your latest keyword research, this will be your first.
Keyword research, keyword mapping for sure.
Yes.
Keyword mapping. What about the data, guys?
I'd say reporting is one. When I joined my current team, they were doing 2.5 day man hours on reporting, and we took that down to half a day by automating a lot of it, because everything was done manually and there was no point. So just look at all the reports you're doing, and if you feel like, oh, I'm doing this every week or every day or every month, then you can definitely automate it somehow.
Well, then let's differentiate a little bit SEO dashboard with SEO reports. Remember that also the goal of reporting is not only to communicate, but also explain the why and how to move forward. And that definitely shouldn't be automated, right? Like that.
Oh no,
that is a layer
definitely.
of
So
explanation.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying, collecting the data and putting it in
Yeah.
templates and making it pretty, that should be automated. But then because you
Yeah.
save that time, you can use it to put down explanations and make sure you explain it to people in the way they can understand it. And you're not in a hurry to do so because you didn't just spend 2 hours creating that report. So you can
100%.
actually be better at your job by automating those reports.
100%.
100%. And did we actually answer this question? Where can we find some Google Collab notebooks that are already existing and coded? It's one of the questions.
So that's the one Veronika already shared some.
Okay, sorry guys.
In my experience, you just go to Google and you search for Python code to do this collab, and you're gonna find it. Somebody's done it and shared it.
And if you Google Brittany Miller, she had a lot of good.
Yes.
Yes, Collab notebooks. So
yes, definitely.
yes. Yeah.
Do you mind typing this name in the chat?
Yes.
I'm sure everybody knows Brittany Mueller, but and the next question. What tools are you using for automated keyword mapping? Kristin already gave us some ideas. Do we have more ideas?
I am just linking to Keyword Insights here. Then there's also a free Streamlit tool that I think was LeafFood who created it with a free function that he built for it. Let me look for it and I will paste it here.
Perfect. Questions. One of the questions, we already answered this one, but maybe somebody wants to elaborate a little bit. As a beginner into SEO automation, I guess not SEO, but just SEO automation, from where should we start? Where should we start? Yeah, a beginner in not SEO, but SEO automation.
I think what Aleyda said about keyword research is usually the best place to start because you're going to be able to get the most robust and interesting data sets like really, really quickly from like Ahrefs or SEMrush or similar. And then from there, you can start to set up an automation process that investigates that data and surfaces important things for you. Yeah.
At the beginning, it will be a lot of research. So, yes.
Yeah, I don't see this question here, but do you think that every SEO team should have one person in charge of automation? Roxana already mentioned that she employed a person like that.
Don't get me wrong, he's not in charge of it. He's just the one that gets more development time and gets time to learn more development, I guess. But I'm expecting everybody in my team to automate their tasks and make their life easier.
So you expect every single SEO in your team to be able to do
based on their
automation.
level, if they're not very technical, I'm happy with them to stick to basic Excel automations using the tools we have. Like for instance, we use Microsoft tools and they have something called Power Automate, and it's one of those if this then that. So if I'm seeing these numbers, then do this action, copy this email to a spreadsheet and import it in Data Studio or something. Like I'm expecting them to find ways to make their day-to-day work easier using the tools we have. And then if they are more technical, if they are able to learn Python, then I'm expecting them to do it at a more complicated level. But all of them should do it. They should all be constructively lazy.
I have a similar rule for my creative team. If they find themselves doing a process that's like copy paste 1,000 times, right? That's not something they should really be doing. It's not worth their time or effort. It could be automated probably relatively easily. So in those instances where they find themselves doing something tedious or frustrating, like that's the signal that they should tell other members of their team, hey, like this is an ongoing thing that I'm doing that's wasting time. How can we automate this? Let's work together to figure out how. And usually there's a good way to do it. And that way oftentimes enhances the result, right? It's like, it's better than how it would have been done if it were a human doing it by themselves.
That's good to know. That's good to know. I should be talking to my team very soon. and giving them some tasks.
Did we just get a lot of people in trouble now?
Definitely yes. Definitely yes. Guys, I really love talking about you, but unfortunately we are running out of time. Thank you very much for your time today, and thank you very much for joining this show. I hope you enjoyed the recipe as much as I did. I've learned a lot, to be honest with you. I've learned a lot from you guys. I wanted to say another big thank you from behalf of the whole Oncrawl team to all the speakers today. The recording of the webinar will be sent to you in a few days, so keep an eye out. Coming next, by the way, this is not the last webinar today. Coming up next, our last episode of the day is Enterprise and Strategy Salad, and I'll try not to butcher the name, although we're in a kitchen. I'll try not to butcher their name, with Bjorn Darko, Kevin Indig, Andor Palau, Eli Schwartz, hosted by Nia Divanji. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.